Okay, here's a recap. I've interconnected 3 radios. So I got my cigarette lighter 12 volt connectors here on the accessory port right here. Then I have my ham radio. Then I have my high band VHF radio accessory ignition switch right here, and it's only 3 amps. It just needs a 12 volt signal to say, hey, the ignition is on, turn on the radio. Same with my low band VHF radio, which is 440 megahertz, around there. Same thing. This is ignition sense to let it know that, hey, the ignition is on, turn on the radio. Then I have the main power for my VHF radio on the constantly hot panel here, and that radio is rated for it's 40 watts or 50 watts, so it's a 15 amp fuse. The low band radio is 100 watts, so it takes a 25 amp fuse. I think it takes 30, but it doesn't go any more than 25, so I put a 25 on there just to be on the safe side. And all the radios and stuff is grounded to this grounding lug, which is going directly to the engine block for the ground. This big old red wire is going directly to the battery. Very important. If anything, those 2 items right there is like the most important thing you should do when you install a radio. Do not take any shortcuts. Like I see a lot of installs where they take the ground wire and hook it up to the body, like around here, you know, like the body of the vehicle itself. It's just good practice to bring it all the way up to the battery or the engine block for a ground. Now back here, this is the low band radio, 40 megahertz, around there. Already got, it's remotely mounted. This is just the radio box itself. The control head, it's in the console right there, so I have a control cable here that hooks up to the control head up front to do it remotely. Good practice again against theft, or if you just want to foil a guy stealing your radio. It's best to keep, if you have a remoted unit in a sedan or something like that, it's best to keep this in the trunk, and then with the control cable run up to your center console here. So when a thief comes in here to steal your radios, all they wind up with is the control head, and that's it. So yeah, you're going to be out of radio, but so is a thief. He cannot make any money out of this, or whatever he's going to do. The good thing about this center console here is these screws are like a security screw, so you need a special tool to get this out. So I got everything interconnected now, and it should work when I turn the vehicle on. So that right there is just accessory switch, but remember, I couldn't find a signal to feed this. If I look hard enough, I probably could find it, but we'll just leave it at that. And there it is, accessory switch coming on.
44, copy.
Sounds like people are on the air already. So I just got one more radio to install right here, and that's my 800 megahertz radio. And let me give you a brief tour. Ham radio, VHF, UHF, high band radio, which fire, police, and some other agencies uses. Low band VHF, which is in the 400 megahertz. And then over here, it's going to be my 800 megahertz radio for public works and some other agencies. So even though my accessory switch is on and this has got like power to it, I could individually turn these radios off if I wanted to, just like that. But then if I turn them on again, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the power, and the accessory line that this thing is connected to is the rear towing cables, and when it's got a delay where once 30 seconds has passed, it'll shut the lights off, and that signal is the same signal that turns the radio off as well. So that's kind of different. On these newer vehicles, you'll see that. But if you got an older model vehicle and you use an accessory switch to that, you could probably find the actual switch. It turned off. The actual switch from the accessory switch, but On the older ones, you probably won't have the daylight running lights where it stays on after you turn the radio off for a little bit and then turns off. But I have all the speakers in my passenger seat, the ones that I've installed already. I got 3 of them for the 3 radios. I'm going to add another one for that other radio. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the output of all those radios into a device that feeds it into one speaker, so I won't have like 30 billion speakers in my back grill over there, my back cage, annoying the hell out of me. I could just have one speaker and have somewhat of a more of a cleaner look. And all the cables and stuff that you see all strewn about, they're going to be tie wrapped and stuffed into the box here, and all this will be covered, and you'll see the end of it, I guess, when I get done. So the last radio to be installed in this center console is a Motorola Astro. It's an 800 megahertz radio, and it's got a bigger control head. I like the bigger control head because it's got these buttons here that I could use and program or whatever. And it's going to go in this spot right down here, and that is remoted. And there's the back side, the one side of the cable, the remote cable. So I set that right there, and the radio is located behind the passenger seat. There's the 800 megahertz radio. This is the VHF low band, and the antenna cable for it. And like I said, it's remoted, and this is the control cable to it. The standard length of these cables is from like 14 to 17 feet long. As you can see, I got enough room, enough length here to run the radio all the way in the back of the SUV here. I could put it in the inside of this panel here or anywhere here. So if you imagine this being a passenger car, it could be in the trunk or somewhere else. I need all this space back here because that's where all my tools and test equipment is going to be stationed at, and that thing is just going to get in the way. Behind the seat is a good enough place for me. But as you can see, the remote cable there, or the remote radio box, could be placed anywhere else in this vehicle. The only caveat to that is you're going to have to run the cables from the front to the back, including the power cables too, because the power is hooked up to the RF box, the actual radio box itself as well. So you're going to have to run battery power from your battery all the way to where your final destination is going to be, whether it be in the back trunk or in my case behind the seat here, including the cables. So it's a little bit more, it's not a little bit more work, it's a lot of work. The way we run the cables, we'll run through the well down this way on the edge of the vehicle here, the mud guard here. Passenger cars and cars that are not going to go into adverse weather, if this was like a work truck or a rescue truck that's going into the hills and stuff, that cable is kind of moved a little bit inside the cab to prevent corrosion and soot and stuff to be corroded in this area here, which happens a little bit. Undercover vehicles, same thing. We hide the cables really good. I'm not going to show you because it's a safety issue. I don't want criminals to know where we put the cables and stuff. So the advantage of having a remote setup is that you'll have a cleaner installation. The dash mounts, if you had the whole RF unit, you'll see the box way up here somewhere, like in a lot of the CBs and stuff, and it'll look kind of unsightly and it's not appealing to the eye or whatnot. Where if you have just a control head mounted in the front here somewhere, it looks like it belongs here. Some people even make fancy panels. They'll take one of these components out and make it look like it's part of the dash. I see people place it on top of the dash up here. I really don't like that because I don't like the sun beating down on the control head, and then it kind of advertises that you got stuff in here. This is just me. My thing is theft. That's my biggest pet peeve, avoiding theft. And like I said before, they could steal the control head, but you'll still have your RF unit, so both of you will be out of luck instead of the one guy taking advantage of you. That's just my way of getting back at the thieves or whatever. So that is one reason why I kind of like the remote setup. Is, like I said, it's hard work, but it's so much beneficial, at least to me. Okay guys, final product. Everything is all dressed up, cleaned up and ready to roll. So here's the distribution panel, the final product. This time around, this is my accessory switch side, and I had it in this little block here. It looked like I used them all up, so I wanted more options, so I kind of put a bigger one in there, and it gives me all these slots to give me some more options later down the road if I choose to. And you know what guys, with me, I'm a radio technician, so sometimes I have to modify stuff on the fly or test something in the field, and I need this stuff here to just make my life a little bit easier when I'm troubleshooting systems or something like that. So that's why I have the capabilities that I have in this configuration, is just for options for me to do my thing out there. Hot all the time, switched power, and there's the relay that'll flip it from hot to cold on this side here. And I made another modification. The green wire that fed this relay here, I have it going to a switch now that's installed on my center console up front, and I'll show you what that'll do. But basically it puts the switch in between, so in normal position the ignition switch would work as normal. Sometimes I want the radios to be quiet, like if I'm going through a drive-through or something, or if I'm talking on the phone, you know, I want to kill all the radios all at once. So what I do is I flip the switch and it'll kill all the radios, which what would happen is it would break the ignition signal coming into this relay. It'll just block it and everything powers down on this side and all the radios will go dead. And then if I flip the switch upwards, it'll provide voltage to this switch here, bypassing the ignition switch, so I could have all my radios turned on with the engine and the keys out of the ignition off. So that's just more options on my part. Sometimes I just want to listen to the radio and not have the accessory keys inside the what do you call it, the ignition switch, and then I'll just bypass it and power everything up without using that. So just layers of options that I like to tag on stuff. And as you can see here, I put all the wires in loom here and just dress it up so it won't look like a rat's nest. And then I have this part of this is from a light bar there, and it fits just perfectly over it, so it'll protect all the hot connections and stuff like that. And I can have easy access in there too if I need to add something or make some changes later on. So here are the remote mounted radios on the back of the cage here, and there's the rest of the wire loom with all the wires tucked inside of it for neatness. On top you'll see my porcupine razorback antenna farm. This one right here is VHF 150 public safety. That guy right there is 800 megahertz. Now notice the frequency spread. I'm going from somewhat low 150 up to 800. This guy right here is 42 megahertz. That's like what, 7 meters or something like that. And in the back is my ham radio, dual band, 144 or 440. And you notice the spread. That's 150. This is 150, or around that area. It's got the maximum spread between the two. So if I transmit on this guy, which I do quite often, it won't bleed too much over on that antenna, and vice versa. Right next to it is 40 megahertz, so you're going to get some bleed over, but not much as if these two here were side by side. Then 800, that's way up there in the frequency span, and so you have sort of separation of frequencies there, so they won't interfere too much with each other. You'll get a little bit, but not much. And I only transmit on one radio at a time, so I won't have two radios transmitting at the same time. And also I'll be listening to one radio at the time. I may monitor both, but me personally, I do more listening than I do talking, so this configuration will be okay. I also plan to put a APRS tracker antenna up here. It'll be 144.39, so it'll be an antenna similar to this size here, a little bit longer. This top end here is just too congested for it. I already got 150 here, 144 back there, and that will cause some interference because the tracker would constantly send out a beacon tracking every move that I make. So what I plan to do is place it on the side fender over the hood there. That'll give me enough separation to kind of like get away from this mess up here. Extreme, but hey, I'm a geek. What do you expect? So here's the final product, the console itself. Up here I got my XM radio mounted on top, convenient place, and it's the radio that I use most. Ham radio, Alinco, Kenwood TK790, VHF, public safety, Kenwood TK690, low band VHF, 40 megahertz around there, then a Motorola Spec 800 megahertz. Here there's a little opening here. I got the speaker wires kind of looped outside because I might do a modification later on, adding another device to add those outputs into one speaker, but we'll see. See how much time I got to do that and stuff and what it takes. If not, I'll just stick all the speakers inside the console here, and that would suffice. For you ham guys that want to install speakers underneath the seat is okay. I kind of like putting it underneath the dash here inside the compartments in here. It's out of the way, and the sound quality is pretty good coming out of there. Now to turn on the radios, it'll be just a matter of turning on the ignition here, and everything comes to life. So that's one way. And now if I turn it off, so that was normal operation using the ignition key to turn on the device and stuff. So what I installed was this switch that I was talking about. Right now it's in the center position. That's the normal operating position for this to do what it's supposed to do with the ignition key. If I wanted to talk to somebody on the phone or go through a drive-through or something like that, I need to turn off all these radios so I can listen to what that other person is saying, because usually this stuff here will start squawking at the most opportune time. So if I go down on this switch here, it knocks everything out. And then when I'm done talking or whatever, middle position, everything comes back on again. Now here I'm going to turn off the ignition. Let's just say I'm having a lunch break and I just want to listen to the radios, but not have the car turned on the accessory and using more juice than I have to. What I could do is just flip the switch up, and a constantly hot 12 volts would supply the power to turn on that relay that's in the panel over there, bypassing the ignition switch and turning all the devices on without having to turn on the vehicle. This is so I could just monitor stuff without having to run the truck and turn on the ignition, do a quick little radio check or something, and then turn it off when I need to. And then when I want to turn it off, I just put it back in the middle position, which is normal operating position. And then with the keys on, I have control again. And that's it, guys.